Welcome to the Minneapolis Pedestrian Advisory Committee's Engineering Subcommittee. I'm Barb Olson. I'm the co-chair. Our other co-chair is not going to make it. He's on an airplane coming back to the cities. So welcome, all of you. Glad you're here. We don't need to take roll, right? You've done that already, Millicent?
Yes, I'm doing it as we have the meeting, but you still have to read the notice about the coronavirus.
I've got it right here. So there's a notice that I read. Members of the board may participate remotely by telephone or other electronic means due to the local public health emergency novel coronavirus pandemic that was declared on March 16th, 2020, pursuant to the provisions of Minnesota Statute Section 13D-021. So today we're going to start. We have 4 presenters online today. So let's, one thing I wanted to remind people, we have, it's been a while since we've had 4. It's been kind of light for the last couple meetings. So let's remember to raise hands if you have a question, and 1 question per hand raise, and hopefully we'll get through it within the time allotted. First on deck is the Nicollet Avenue Bridge over Minnehaha Creek. That's at 30%, and Forrest Hardy from Public Works and Mark Maves from SEH are here. Welcome, you guys.
Hi, good to see you all. It's Forrest with TPP. I'm kind of new on the project here, but Mark Maves has been working on it along with Meseret from the bridge office, and he will be able to go over the slides and answer any questions. So Mark.
Thanks, Forrest. Thanks for having us. So Meseret is here, like Forrest said. Also, Ahmed Omar is here from the Bridge Group. So I'll go through the presentation, and then Meseret and Ahmed are here to back me up. Do you put the PowerPoint up, or do I?
Sorry, do you have it in front of you, Mark?
Yeah.
You go ahead and share screen if you don't mind.
I certainly can. All right. Can you all see the screen?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Okay. Can you all hear me very well?
Loud and clear.
Okay, good. Right. All right. So the project is the Nicollet Avenue South Bridge over Minnehaha Creek. We're doing a bridge rehabilitation on the bridge. I'll walk you through just exactly where the bridge is at. Come on. There we go. So project location, Nicollet Avenue Bridge is just west of 35W, between 50th Street and Diamond Lake Road.
Mark,
You lost the share screen.
we're not seeing your screen.
All right. I think something's. All right, how's that?
Yep.
That's it.
Okay. So the bridge, like I said, is just west of 35W between 50th and Diamond Lake Road, spanning Minnehaha Creek. Doesn't want to advance for some reason. There we go. So some history of the bridge. It was constructed in 1923. It replaced an original bridge that was constructed in 1908. So the current bridge, as you see it, it was constructed in 1923. It was rehabilitated in 1973. At that time, the deck was taken off, and there were some repairs done on some of the cantilever floor beams, and new sidewalks were put on as well, and new railings. The sidewalks were widened again in 2002. They were widened to the inside. They added, they widened the sidewalks on each side to 12 feet, and then 4 monuments were also placed in the 4 corners. This was done as part of a neighborhood repair to the bridge to discourage speeding, for one thing, and also to add the monuments and some of the ornamental lighting as an aesthetic piece to the bridge. The bridge is eligible for the National Register of Historic Places as well. Brief description of the bridge. It's 816 feet long, approximately 62 feet wide. There are 9 concrete arches and 7 concrete slab approach spans. 8 of the 9 arches span 60 feet. The center arch span, which goes over Minnehaha Parkway, spans 75 feet. The bridge deck is supported by floor beams, spandrel columns, and cantilever brackets. And the concrete piers are supported on timber piling. So there's some nomenclature of the bridge there in the graphic. So the concrete deck carries 2 vehicle lanes, 2 12-foot sidewalks, and also 2 7-foot bike lanes. The need for the project is a rehab due to deterioration of the bridge's main structural elements, the deck, the floor beams, the columns, and the arch ribs and the piers. Those need some attention due to water infiltration that's gotten through on the many deck joints of the bridge. The water has gotten into these structural elements. And concrete and reinforcement steel has deteriorated through the years. So our scope is to remove and reconstruct the bridge deck, remove and reconstruct all the floor beams and the spandrel columns. We're going to reconstruct the bridge deck with 12 new joints, significantly reducing the amount of joints that are there right now. We're going to conduct surface repairs on the arch ribs and piers, and that will entail removing deteriorated concrete, putting reinforcement and new concrete back in its place. And lastly, we're going to remove and reconstruct the railings and the ornamental light poles. Some of the constraints that we're dealing with structurally, the overall width is primarily governed by these floor beam cantilevers. We can't extend those any more than they currently are. Part of this is because of historic reasons. Part of it is for structural reasons. So the overall bridge deck width needs to be slightly narrower than the existing. Historically, the design needs to comply with the Secretary of Interior standards for the treatment of historic properties. We do have a historian on board. She will work with us in consultation with Minnesota SHPO. The features that define the bridge must be preserved. The main feature of the bridge is the concrete arch. Also, the combination of the spandrel columns and the floor beams is also a very important feature for the historic aspect of the bridge. Any additions to the bridge must not deter from the historic features. Here's the project layout. Everything in orange is primarily the bridge. Like I said, it's 816 feet long. We're doing some approach work on the south as it intersects with Minnehaha Parkway, and also a little bit on the north tying into Nicollet Avenue just before 52nd Street. So here's the existing cross section. Currently we have 2 11-foot through lanes, 2 7-foot bike lanes, and 2 12-foot walks. So that'll give us a 36-foot width for our roadway. We also have on each side of the deck a pipe railing, or kind of not really an ornamental railing, more like a pipe barrier on top of a concrete parapet. So the overall width of the bridge deck is 62'4". Here is our proposed cross section. We're proposing two 11-foot through lanes for vehicles, 2-foot shoulder, a 2-foot raised median separating the vehicular lanes from the bike lane, a 6-foot bike lane, an 8-foot walk, and then a 1-foot 2-inch crash-tested concrete railing on the deck edge. This will give us a 26-foot roadway width and an overall width of 60 feet and 4 inches for our bridge deck. This shows the south approach at the intersection of Minnehaha Parkway, where the two roadways come up to the bridge, or up to the roadway. So this just shows the cross section, like I talked about, the 8-foot walk, the 6-foot bike lanes, the 13-foot through traffic, and how we're transitioning into the existing conditions. And existing conditions being a 6-foot walk, a parking area, the 6-foot bike lane, and then a 13 or 11-foot through lane. That's on the south side. On the north side, similarly, we're transitioning right before 52nd Street. The 8-foot walk will transition to a approximate 4.5 or 5-foot walk. 6-foot bike lane will transition across 52nd into a 5-foot bike lane. Similarly, on the east side, we got the 6-foot bike and 8-foot walk transitioning back into the existing condition as we head north on Nicollet. The bridge railing, like I said, the existing railing is a metal pipe railing on a concrete parapet. It's approximately 4 feet high. The proposed railing is going to be similar to what we have out on the recently opened 10th Avenue Bridge. It will be 3.5 foot high. This railing also closely resembles the original railing on the bridge as constructed in 1923. And that is all I have as far as the presentation goes. Certainly could take questions.
Okay. Are there any questions for Mark or Forrest at this time? Or comments?
Yeah. Is it so 30%? Is that so? That's the bridge closes next year, year after. What is the plan for the
we do not have a letting date right now. The city is still trying to obtain project funding for construction. I think in the STIP right now, or in the it's maybe 25 construction. So we're hoping to get some money in the next legislative session, or perhaps even with the infrastructure bill.
So could you say it would be no sooner than, did you say 2025 or some other reference?
It could be as soon as 24.
Okay. And it would involve a complete closing like you'd seen like we'd seen at every other bridge, right? Is that right?
Yeah, correct. Because of the nature of this bridge, it'd be very difficult to stage it because of the 2 arch ribs underneath and significant loading that would go on each one, trying to stage it. And Lindale provides a very convenient detour as well.
Right. And thank you.
Paul, why don't you go first?
Okay, I know you're still kind of early in design, but when the bridge is under construction, will the bike trail underneath the bridge along Minnehaha Creek and the 2 roadways underneath the bridge, Minnehaha Parkway, will those be open to traffic or closed at some times and open others? What's the plan for that?
I think we're going to keep them open for most of the time. Part of what we're thinking of doing is having some kind of a scaffolding system that would protect the bikes as they go underneath one of the arch spans. Also, they won't be working, let's say, in that primary location all the time. So our thinking is that both the roadway and the bikes and peds should be open at least 90% of the time. There may come a time when it does have to be closed just because they'll be pouring concrete or pouring some of the columns or the beams, and then it just may be kind of an unsafe condition at that time. But the plan is to keep them open as long as we can.
Okay, thank you.
My question is, with the proposed changes on the decking, what is you talked about a division between vehicular travel and bikes. Is that a raised concrete division, or what kind of division is that?
Yeah, I can go back to it here. Just a minute. Actually, I got a real good photo of the 10th Avenue Bridge that was recently constructed. So it's what we call a bike buffer. So it's 2 foot in width and it's 7 inches tall.
Right.
So it's basically a raised median that's going to separate the vehicular from the bikes. And then there's opportunities to put delineators on those as well for let's say winter snow plowing, or just to define where they start and where they stop.
Okay, thank you.
I'm wondering if there are any adjustments being made to the design based on projected flooding for Minnehaha with climate breakdown. I know we've seen presentations from the park board around the floodplains and what's expected, but I'm curious in your planning how that's impacting design.
I'm sorry, I didn't get the first part of the question. The flooding.
Mm-hmm. With the creek there, I don't have a sense of how it may or may not flood in 100-year, 500-year flood events. And the park board has come in front of us talking about ways they're looking at mitigating the impacts of extreme rainfall events from climate breakdown in that area. And I'm curious how that is impacting your process.
I don't think it'll impact us too much. We're primarily working a considerable height above that. Our arch ribs are primarily above that 100-year event. We're not doing anything to the grading around the bridge. We aren't doing anything to the pier columns or the pier foundations. So I really don't think the water level is going to affect us as far as the rehab that we're doing. This thing is considerably higher than, let's say, the 100-year water elevation. We will be analyzing flows that will be going into the creek from the bridge, and working with the Minnehaha Watershed District on that. But we're not planning on doing any grading or any work adjacent to the creek. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Yeah.
Oh, you're muted.
I said, any other questions for Mark or Forrest, or any comments before we move on? Okay. Well, and you're at 30%. When will you know when you can start construction? Do you have any idea of when that will be determined?
Oh, boy, sooner rather than later. Yeah, I mean, next legislative session, if there's some bonding money, maybe,
Okay.
that would be the earliest opportunity.
Okay.
So middle of the year, middle of 22, perhaps.
Okay. All right. Well, best of luck with that, I guess. And
Thank you.
thank you guys very much. Appreciate it. Okay, next up, let me get my notes here. I'm taking notes and leading, and I get a little muzzled. We have the Hennepin multimodal improvements at 15%. That includes Luke Hansen from Minneapolis Public Works, Josh Potter from Hennepin County, and Ross Tillman from Bolton and Mank. So welcome.
I'll kick it off. Actually, I'm stepping in for Luke Hansen today. Kelsey Fote with the City of Minneapolis Public Works. I'm going to hand it, knowing we're short on time, I'm going to hand it directly over to Josh and our consultant partners to talk through this one.
Thanks, Kelsey. I'm just going to introduce myself, Josh Potter with Hennepin County Public Works, project manager for this project. We're partnering with the Bolton and Mink team, Alta as well, on the design for this project. So I'm going to kick it off to Scott here and let him continue with introductions.
Great. Thanks, Josh. Great to be here tonight. I'm Scott McBride with Bolton and Mink. I'm playing the role of Ross Tillman tonight, as Kelsey is playing the role of Luke. We've got some stand-ins tonight.
That's all right.
I've also got a couple of teammates here, as Josh talked about. Cody Christensen from Bolton and Mink will be a co-presenter. He'll lead some of the conversation tonight. And we also have Colin Harris from Alta here with us today, too. So hit the next slide, Cody. So we're here to talk about Hennepin and First, multimodal improvements, and we'll get to just kind of what that is here in a moment. But first, where we are in the process. We were here before this group about a year ago, done a lot of work in the interim, and we're down to 2 concepts right now. And today we're here to start to share those concepts with you. We're at the start of approximately a 30-day engagement period. We kicked it off with an open house last night, and so we're very happy to be back here with the Pedestrian Advisory Committee to talk about some of the pedestrian improvements we intend to implement there. Next. Thanks, Cody. So the project area we're talking about is First and Hennepin from Main Street up to 8th Street, where the 2 roadways come back together. And since we were here a year ago, we've actually added a small piece, you'll see on the bottom there, a block of Main Street between First and Hennepin. And that is in cooperation with the Minneapolis Park and Rec Board. They have identified funding to put in that missing link in the trail system right there. And so we are working with the Park Board to design as part of this project and ultimately to construct as part of this project that piece of the seam. So as I mentioned, this is about a 7-block stretch and Main Street has been added. As you all know, this is really a gateway kind of a project. Coming out of downtown, it's a gateway into Northeast and to the northern suburbs. It's got a lot of local, regional, and statewide significance with all the various partners here. Metro Transit runs a number of routes. MnDOT has facilities here, and of course the county and the city have facilities as well. It's a very vibrant business and residential community as well, right on the edge of downtown, just across the river. And next slide. So the current project is a federally funded bikeway project. So the scope of the project is to add a bikeway to First and Hennepin in that project area. In addition to that, we are making accessible pedestrian improvements and replacing traffic signals through this area, including accessible pedestrian signals in the area as well. And importantly, this is not a total reconstruction of the roadway, which somewhat limits the scope of what we can do here. It is a retrofit, so we'll leave the roadway as is, and we will add a bikeway to it, as you'll see here in a little bit. Next slide. So the schedule, we are currently in the early stages. We're in the planning phase, and we intend to be into that planning phase for the next few months, at least into 2022. And if you look at the bottom of the screen, we have completed that first phase, the existing conditions. We've developed a vision of the corridor, and we are towards the end of that second phase, which was to develop, test, and evaluate corridor concepts. So we've run a number of concepts through our project management team, and we've settled on 2 to bring out to the public, which you'll see here in a little bit. The next phase over the next few months and into early 2022 is that we'll select one of those alternatives. We'll put more preliminary design into that, and ultimately take it to the city for approval. After that, back up to the top there, the blue bar, we will be into design of the facility out of the preliminary and into final design of that from 2022 into 2023. We anticipate construction in 2024, and we do anticipate it just to be a 1-year construction project. And that will sync up pretty well with the proposed E-line construction as well for Metro Transit. Next slide. Just a couple of slides on the project goals. We started out with these goals: increasing the safety and accessibility for all modes of travel out there, making sure we made modal connections while looking at pedestrian connections, trail connections throughout the area, and transit connections as well. And another project goal is to support active living and environmental health goals that both the city and the county have. And then, of course, supporting, I mentioned the vibrant community here, supporting that land use and supporting the business district that is so important and vital here. Next slide. So we started out with those goals, and we took those to the public, and we got feedback on those goals. And the engagement themes we've heard from the public today are shown here: safety and accessibility for rolling and walking, active living and walkability, and serving the growth that's planned here. We're working with a current development, the Hennepin development that's going up right now. A lot of comments about streetscape and public realm, green infrastructure, and business district support, which falls into the last one as well. Public parking is a big issue in this area for both business and residential support. Next slide. So we took those engagement themes and we developed project evaluation criteria for the project that we will be applying to the 2 concepts we're about to show you today. First off, promoting equity, safety, and health within the project. And I mentioned the public realm aspects too, creating robust, sustainable, resilient, inviting public realm. We are following the city and the county's hierarchy of planning, providing safe and high quality pedestrian facilities, bicycle facilities, transit service, and then traffic operations after that. Continuing to support an active and very resilient business district, and then developing a plan that is sustainable and implementable within the context and the budget of this particular project. So the next slide, and I'll hand it off to Cody Christensen here to talk through the concepts and get you down kind of on the ground.
Thanks, Scott. So here's kind of the existing cross section. This is on Hennepin between 2nd and University. There isn't necessarily a consistent typical section through both corridors, but this is about as close as that gets. So you'll see the 3 through lanes with a parking lane on both sides of the roadway, and then approximately a 12-foot pedestrian space behind the curb. That's for the most part how the right-of-way is split up today, and noting that there's no bicycle facility here today. So concept 1, this is kind of in line with the county's funding application. So we have an on-street buffered bike lane along the right side of the roadway, removing most of that parking for the installation of that bike lane. Then keeping, as I mentioned, the 3 through lanes and parking on the left side of the roadway. As Scott mentioned, this is a retrofit project, so we are aiming to keep most of the existing curb along the roadway where possible, but we are making improvements in all of the intersections. So that includes curb extensions where we can fit them, ADA improvements, the APS signals, signal replacements. As well, we're in both concepts removing some free rights that exist on First Avenue, and also have some improvements to the bus stop locations, installing some floating transit stops where we can along the corridor. So I have a rendering here of kind of how that concept would look in that same area on Hennepin. So you can see the 3 travel lanes with the striped buffered bike lane there next to the sidewalk. Our concept 2 creates a separated bike lane or protected bike lane on that same side of the roadway. So we install that curb similar to what was shown on the previous bridge project. And then here we have that rightmost travel lane dedicated to a transit lane, keeping 2 general purpose lanes on the left side along with the parking. Here again, working with the existing curbs where we can. And similar to concept 1, we have the floating bus stops, curb extensions, free right removals, and ADA improvements. So here again is a rendering of that same location for concept 2, showing that transit lane and protected bike lane along the right side of the roads. So I want to hit on a few things that are again included in both concepts, but are kind of key features on what we're trying to do with the project. So we are proposing removing both of the channelized right turns along First Avenue. So on the top, you have the intersection of First, Central, and 7th that has the kind of free right channelized right turn coming off of Central onto First. So we are proposing to remove that while keeping that driveway access still there for that particular property. The second one then is over on Main Street at First Avenue, where again you have the channelized right turn going westbound on First and getting on Main Street. So again, we are proposing to remove that free right movement, still including a right turn / through lane, but making that a much safer area for those that are walking and biking in the area to get around these intersections. And again, that is included in both concepts. Another thing that's included is filling the gap on Hennepin Avenue between Main and 2nd. So that again is included in both concepts, but we are proposing to fill that sidewalk gap as well. And then touching on Main Street, Scott mentioned that as we progress this project, we were able to coordinate with MPRB to get this regional trail connection included in the project. So we are, again, kind of working within the existing roadway a little bit. Along the river side of Main Street, there's a guardrail kind of protecting from some steep embankment down to the river. So we're working within on the inside of that guardrail, proposing to shift some curb over to make room for a wide shared use path through that section of Main Street. There's very wide shoulders and wide lanes on that southbound Main Street piece. So we're able to fit that in. And then another piece to touch on is the triangle concept. So this is at the intersection of Hennepin Central and 5th Street. This particular location on the corridors is one that doesn't work well for any mode. It's confusing for vehicles. It's not very safe and very confusing on ped and bike as well. So the proposal here is to close that section off on 5th Street between Hennepin and Central to vehicles while we're keeping it open for pedestrians and bicyclists to continue along 5th Street through that strip of kind of plaza as it could be here. Also included is putting in some medians along Central Avenue, further reducing the amount of conflict points within that particular intersection. And I will note here that, as Scott mentioned, the team has been coordinating with the Hensen development that's kind of in this southwest quadrant to ensure that what we're proposing with our project ties into what they are constructing now, both for the bikeway along Hennepin as well as this triangle concept. And another thing to note here is that while this makes it safer and better for bikes and pedestrians, this closure on 5th Street also benefits motorists and eliminates one of the signal phases of this area. So it actually reduces delay for vehicles traveling through the corridor as well. So here's a rendering of that with the view from Hennepin on the west side of that intersection. Again, this is kind of a high level rendering of what this could be, how this actually gets put into design and where those opportunities are for greening and green infrastructure is still being developed. But this is just meant to show kind of how that could look different in the future with this project. So just touching again on kind of those conflict point reductions. So from a vehicular standpoint, you know, there's 58 conflict points in this triangle, basically where we could expect a crash to occur. With the triangle concept, that number is reduced to 16, which is over 70% reduction, which is pretty substantial. From a pedestrian standpoint, that change in the intersection has a 40% reduction in those pedestrian conflict points with pedestrians and vehicles. And for bikes, it kind of depends on how you're traveling through the area, but it would likely be somewhere in between those two percentages. So then kind of circling back to what Scott went over with the evaluation goals. So here's the list of those 8 goals that he went through and how those 2 concepts along with a no build or existing conditions compare with one another. These goals all had a number of measures associated with them that looked at various things that we could analyze. And so these gradings of poor, fair, or good are kind of an average of those different measures. And so that's how that all came to be, and we can go into more depth on any of those that anybody would like. So just wrapping things up here so we can open up for some questions. Some of the remaining decision points that we have going through this engagement period is what that bikeway type is, if there are transit lanes or just general purpose lanes, what the community's streetscape priorities are and where those could be located, as well as coordinating with other projects. As Scott mentioned, the Metro Transit E-Line is in the area. We're also coordinating with MnDOT and their projects in the area as well. And then also working with residents and business owners on those on-street parking impacts. So next steps, continuing this targeted outreach and coordination, and then refining the design of that preferred concept so we can come back in early 2022 with a project update of that final preferred concept. Anything I missed, Scott? Josh?
One thing I will add is that with your agenda packet, we did include layouts of both of these two concepts, so you can jump into them and dive down into the actual details of these. We stayed at a pretty high level here and just showed you the typicals and the renderings, but there is more information there, and you can get a feel for those on those layouts as well. And we're prepared to take a look at those if you want to dive into those today. So we'll stop there and open it up for questions to the committee.
Peter?
Hi, thanks. Between concept 1 and concept 2, what are the differences in the parking impacts?
The difference between the two, concept 1 keeps, I think, 5 more parking spots than concept 2, particularly on Hennepin, I believe between University and 4th.
Yeah, I'll add to that too, Peter. We did an analysis of kind of the surrounding area. Looked at parking spots available. We looked at utilization on a weekday, utilization on a weekend, and effectively, when that bike lane goes down the right side, it takes the parking along the right side. So when you look at the whole area under concept 1, there's about a 15% reduction of parking in the total area, and just slightly more, as Cody noted, about 17% reduction in the parking spaces available in option number 2.
Take it all, but I've just noticed that stretch between, I think the stretch you're talking about, across from Surdix, between, where all those, a lot of takeout, a lot of drop-in businesses are just anticipating them. The howling. I just wonder has that come already? It's like, it looks like when you look at in your matrix, the concept 1 versus concept 2 looks really, really strong for concept 2, so I'd love to see that delivered.
Yeah, thanks, Peter. And you're right. We are hearing about the parking from businesses. Right now, we're doing a lot of business outreach as much as we can. As you well know, businesses over the last 18 months are really kind of hammered, just based on the environment around, and it's tough to get feedback. So, they don't typically, they're just not able to come to meetings that we call to get feedback. So we're working with the former council member, or I guess the existing council member, and the new council member elect to reach out to some of those businesses as well, and do some more just one-on-one targeted conversations with them, because it's a tough issue for business, that's for sure.
Thanks.
Are there any?
Got a couple of,
Go ahead.
yeah. So I didn't realize, I was only able to look at what apparently is a more detailed concept, because that was all that came through with the agenda today. So I apologize if I'm diving in too deep, but I'd agree with Peter that only option 2 really looks like it meets city goals and where we need to be headed. I'll throw out a couple of comments, specifically the lane widths are consistently looking really, really wide, especially given that a lot of these are one-ways. Seeing 12-foot lanes, 10.5-foot lanes is just, aside from a 12-foot lane for the bus lanes, drivers go faster, it's harder to hear one another. It is a much more unpleasant experience, even ignoring things like crossing distance. Looking at the east portion of Hennepin Avenue, the north side of the street does not have a sufficiently wide sidewalk, and I'm assuming that maybe your team hasn't gotten out there to walk it yet, but there especially, I think, allocating more space to the bike lane is important, because it may often also be the pedestrian lane, given how tight things are for trying to walk there. I'm seeing at the 5th Central Hennepin Junction that there's those medians, but drawing them all the way through the crosswalk so that they provide protection to pedestrians, I think, is critical. I've seen horrible, very near misses at that intersection, including one person who literally gave up. Like, they nearly got killed. It was horrible, and they just paused and turned around and went, I don't know if they went back home or where. They just couldn't keep going. And I don't think that's atypical along this corridor. So doing whatever you can to tighten up those wide radii turns. And then I'm also just curious, sort of, it's still a lot of pavement, and knowing that we're right on the river and we're with climate breakdown, we're facing more intense rainfall events. I'm wondering what the transition plan might be as we see mode share shift intensify, and knowing that this isn't a full rebuild, but the area may be one that needs more stormwater management assistance.
Yeah, that's a lot of good comments in there, and we appreciate that. And on the stormwater side, we've started a dialogue with the city water resources and the watershed as well. And frankly, there's a little bit of excitement there that we might be able to do some things out here to really try to enhance that. You're right. There's still a lot of pavement. We're not rebuilding everything, so the ability to make less impervious does not lie with this project. Perhaps it's with the next one Josh does in about 12 years or so. But there may be some things to do at that point. But we do have the ability to address some of those stormwater things now. We are also considering the climate action goals of both the city and the county as well. And we think this fits this section, whether it's 1 or 2, fits that fairly well. You could probably say that 2 fits it a little bit more with the transit advantage that happens there, and hopefully the mode shift that might induce as transit gets an advantage through this corridor. So
well, and the protected bike lanes also seem huge. I mean, it's a really, really unpleasant corridor to be walking, despite how many businesses and homes are around there. And it's having protected, I can't imagine biking on it without protected bike lanes there, given the stress and the decisions that are on drivers and how many lanes are speeding and how wide they are. So
it's probably not surprising that you are not the first to say that.
Yeah, it just seems like one has a hard time meeting those climate goals. I also am noting on the west portion of Hennepin Avenue, it looks like the lack of a sidewalk or lack of a ADA accessible sidewalk on the north side of the street is getting addressed in option 2, but not option 1. So there's just a lot of details, like looking at your more detailed plans. Each time I go back and forth between the two, as you've been speaking, 2 is just so clearly superior to trying to get where we need to go, and can be tightened up to be even better. And I'm going to zip it now. Thank you.
No, great comments. Thanks.
Any other comments or questions?
I'll add one in response to that last one on the lane width. I just want to note that the 12.5-foot lanes those are inclusive of the gutter for those outside lanes. So the goal of the project is to reduce all lanes to a striped width of 10.5 feet or 11 feet for the transit lane. So that's kind of the striped width of those.
There's a 14-foot lane showing up on Main Street. Is that an error then? So
that is correct. Main Street, we aren't really reworking except for getting that trail added on the west side. So
yeah, you could do an awesome 12-foot trail.
Yep. There's room for
as dangerous.
There's room for improvement for sure. Today that road is a 17-foot lane with an 8-foot shoulder.
I mean, I've walked the shoulder because there's nothing else you can do. We don't have a sidewalk, and it does feel wide enough to, I mean, you can kind of, it's almost shared street. It's so wide that I'm less worried about cars than I might be in other scenarios, even though they do, they're questionable there. But okay, I'm looking forward to seeing the more refined design too. Thank you.
Thanks.
I will second that, and also second the support for option 2. I really think that's so much better of a concept, especially dealing with the change and hopefully less cars, more transit, more bikes, more people walking. It looks like that would really be a good choice. So and with Julia's comments as well. So are there any other comments or questions before we let these go?
I will just note, this is from the project team from Josh Potter. I'll just note that this project certainly, as conveyed, is at a pretty critical point where certainly anticipate it'd be great to have the PAC consider a resolution on this project. So appreciate that.
Question. Sure. And when do can we get that to you? How soon do you need that?
Right now, based on the project schedule, we're continuing our outreach through middle of December here. So I'd say there's 2-3 weeks to still work through that.
Hopefully sooner than later, we'll get that to you.
Thank you very much.
Yep. And you'll be back sometime in 2022, is that correct? All right.
Correct. We're anticipating Q1 of 2022.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you for the time. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Next is 40th Street Bikeway with Dan Edgerton. If Dan is here, there he is. Okay, hi Dan.
I'm here. Hey. Thank you, everybody, for having me, and thanks for your attention. I'm gonna share a brief PowerPoint presentation for you today, and then I've got maybe 10 slides. I'll kind of go through what this thing is all about, and then hopefully time after that for comments, questions, that kind of thing. So I'm here today to talk about the 40th Street Bikeway. Quick agenda slide. These are all the points that I'm gonna hit on. But here it is. This is the project we're really talking about. We're in 40th Street, so South Minneapolis and the East Harriet and Kingfield neighborhoods. And the limits of the project are from Kings Highway, essentially over to I-35, Stevens Avenue on the other side. And so you can see kind of under the why here. The purpose for the project is to upgrade the bike route. I know this is PAC, but there are some pedestrian benefits as well, and we'll talk about what the design looks like and kind of go from there. But the real impetus for this project is that 40th Street right now is undergoing some heavy utility work. Next summer is planned for a maintenance project. It's a seal coat to kind of put things back together. And the idea is, as part of that project, we can upgrade this bike facility and make some real kind of safety and usability improvements right on its heels. So the project, as planned, and I've got some slides to show this, will upgrade the existing facilities on 40th Street. Today there are on-street bike lanes. They're striped, one in each direction. It will change that, reallocate the space to a two-way bikeway on the south side. So it's just paint and sticks type of project. There's no capital improvement. There's no moving around the curb lines or anything like that. So with the seal coat project coming in next year, when they kind of take out the paint and do their thing, the idea is that we could just put this project back in its place. And the other thing I'll mention is this project will leverage existing intersection improvements that are being built as part of the Bryant Avenue project and also are already built as part of the Grand Avenue project. So those projects kind of put in a bend out protected intersection design, and this bikeway will feed right into those. So with that, I got a couple of kind of context slides here. This one's a little bit ugly. I apologize for that, but the green dotted line across your screen is 40th Street. And the whole point here is to show that this is a critical link in the network. It's an east-west link that really connects a whole bunch of stuff on the north-south network. So that's what these burnt orange color boxes represent, are sort of the intersecting bikeways, which include the 35W pedestrian bridge on the east. And then there's kind of a 1 or 1.5 block jaunt on the west over at Kings Highway that gets you all the way in, to the Chain of Lakes and the Grand Rounds and all of that good stuff. So here is sort of what the proposed concept looks like. We're talking about, as I mentioned, a two-way delineator protected bikeway that would be up against the curb and up against the existing sidewalk facilities. Is about a mile, a little bit short of a mile. You can see the picture. This is from over by the U. This is Oak Street, but it's very similar in design. And then kind of the representative cross section on the bottom. There is some very minor signal work. There are 2 traffic signals on this corridor. One is on Lyndale and one is on Nicollet. And it's just adjusting some mast arms so that we have good sight lines with the new bike facility. So this is meant to be a representation of what the corridor looks like today. So you can see kind of the quick street view snapshot, but for most of the corridor, what exists is you have on-street parking on the north side. You've got bike lanes in both directions, and then you've got 2 travel lanes. So that's all of the corridor except for about 2 blocks is kind of that configuration. And I'll get to what the exception is in a minute here. And again, I kind of showed the concept a few slides ago, but here's how that sort of translates to this corridor. So reallocating the space for the existing bikeways to create that 2-way bikeway on the south side. And in doing so, we free up some additional space, which gives us the ability to do that painted buffer with the delineator protection, which provides safety benefits and will make it a little bit better of a user experience. It also will provide additional separation of the sidewalk, better manage vehicle speeds and all of that kind of thing. So there are some tangential benefits to people walking in the area as well. Okay, so this is the exception, and this is really the rub of the project. I said that the entire stretch, the whole mile, is essentially parking on the north side of the street only. The exception is there's a 2-block stretch from Bryant Avenue to Lyndale Avenue. And as it sits today on that 2-block stretch, there is parking on the north and the south side of the street. This on-street parking serves sort of an existing business node. If any are familiar, there's Farmstead Bike Shop, which is on Lyndale. There's LaRue's, which is on, or Farmstead is on Bryant. There's a LaRue's, which is that cool gift shop on the Lyndale side. There's a new restaurant on the south side of the street there. So that's the neighborhood we're talking about. With this project going in, the proposed condition would eliminate parking on the south side of the street. So we lose about 19-ish parking spaces, depending on how you measure that. The existing parking on the north side of the street would remain, as with the rest of the corridor. So the entire thing kind of keeps the parking on the north side. But in this 2-block stretch, there is this impact of eliminating the on-street parking to facilitate this bikeway. So there is a lot of engagement. What was that?
Would it be metered on the north side to help with the turnover?
It's not metered today, no, and we wouldn't put meters in. There are sort of the timed signs, if that makes sense to you, but it's like the post that says like 30-minute limit, that kind of thing. So this project wouldn't necessarily install meters that aren't there today, although that's something, that traffic or the existing adjacent businesses could look at in the future. So that's the rub. We have done some outreach with the businesses. We're talking with them. Of course, they, I think Scott McBride mentioned in the past presentation, we're I don't want to minimize, the impact to the businesses. It's a hard time for everybody, and on-street parking and front door access is important to a lot of these businesses. But that's kind of the trade-off we're looking at. We did
Go
ahead.
Have they shared information about that?
Yes. In short, yes. Yeah.
I mean, so there's data that they've provided about that impact. Just knowing that that's not generally what studies show, I realize there can be exceptions, and I'm curious if and how they are showing that.
Well, they provided anecdotal, so I'm not gonna.
Oh, okay.
I'm not
so
gonna
not
put
really
words in their mouth. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
So
they
there
didn't do, like,
is
surveys of how customers arrive or anything. Okay.
For context, yeah, no problem. Good question. For context, though, I'll keep it brief. On the north side of 40th Street, there's like a fertility clinic. There's a holistic health place. So we talked to businesses about, for instance, if their customers don't get front door access and they're pregnant and it's winter, is that how can we get around that? So those are the types of conversations we're having. More direct, maybe to the point you were making, though, is we did do some parking counts and kind of a mini parking study. And we found that, generally speaking, Yep, 40, that 2 blocks of 40th Street is pretty parked up. You know, it's maybe 3/4 full during the peak periods, but there are some parking spaces there, and there is capacity on the adjacent streets. From business perspective, that's not as good as front door access, but it is there. So that's kind of the parking. We can get into more detail on what we collected and all of that if folks are interested, but I just wanted to, you know, kind of pause and acknowledge that it's a significant issue for those folks. So a little bit on process. This project is a little bit different than some of the other projects that you're used to seeing, insofar as there's no capital component. We're not moving curbs. There's no construction. It's really just paint and sticks. So as such, it's a little bit more of a streamlined process. We're going to seek approval from the council through something called a to the record memo, but it's basically the process by which the traffic department makes traffic control changes. So you can kind of see the timeline here. Right now, we're in the kind of the concept design phase. We're noodling on the concept. We're doing some community engagement. The hope is to bring this to council for approval right about the end of the year through that to the record process, and then move swiftly into the detailed engineering, and then be ready for kind of the installation on the toes of that seal coat, which would happen mid-summer, July, August timeframe. So with that streamlined process, we don't necessarily have the 0, 30, 90% approval process. I wouldn't come back to this group or others unless there was a significant change. So this is kind of the meeting to show what we're doing and to take comments. So that's the end of my presentation. I kind of spit a lot out at you, but I'm happy to answer any questions, have any discussion. If the group is so inclined, we would request a motion of support. You know, if they're ready to make that sort of motion, that would be great. If not, if there are issues, let's talk about them.
Okay. Anybody have questions or comments for Dan?
I do.
Go ahead, Julia.
Okay. I've got 3, I think. One, in the past, Nicollet and 40th has not been automatic recall, and I know that we are, it's the first one I noticed actually when the city went to automatic recall in response to COVID, but I just want to make sure that gets locked in. Knowing I've watched people biking be unable to cross there in the past. So raising that concern, and then I'm also wondering why putting these lanes on the south side. I always have a bit more concern about snow and ice when things are on the south side of the street, though I realize it's a fairly low use area, so shorter buildings and probably less shade impacting it, but I'm curious about that consideration.
Mm-hmm. Automatic recall, comment noted. We're not doing any work to the signals themselves, but I'll take that comment back. I'll take that comment back with me and make sure that the right folks get it. Why on the south side? Yeah, the combining of the 2 bike lanes to a 2-way bike facility. I kind of touched on how that allocation of space allows us to get the buffer. Short answer is we sort of noodled on whether it's north or south side, and found that there are less impacts to the south side to the carriageway, walkways from the sidewalk to front people's houses. There's more houses fronting on the north side, as well as driveway impacts for alleys and things like that. So short answer, to that one, but there's a little bit more detail that we can get into.
Thank you. And then lastly, I really, really hope that there's a lot of effort to educate nearby businesses, especially when they're dealing with things like fertility, when we're looking at, fairly substantial societal collapse if we don't shift from driving within the lifetime of any child conceived right now. It just seems, the friends I know, myself as somebody who would like to have kids, and the friends I know who are having kids are wanting to be able to bike places safely. And the bigger barrier is, can I take my kid out without worrying their, do I have to have a giant metal box to protect them? So it seems absolutely critical to, I understand the concerns the businesses must have. It's been such a stressful 2 years for everybody, but the rate of change isn't going to stop now and figuring out how we can be supportive of the businesses without giving in to what seems to be unfounded fears, often based on the existing entitlement of drivers to taking up most of the city. I hope that doesn't determine the future of this project.
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate that comment. Yep, that's part of this. It's somewhat limited in scope, the engagement that we're doing. It's a relatively minor project in that it's paint and sticks. I dwell on the parking because that is the number one sort of thing that if somebody's opposed to this project, that's what they're likely talking about. The response to those folks is what you said in so many words. It's that the city, with its policies, with its transportation action plan, with its Vision Zero commitment, and with its new facility design guide, has adopted this approach. And that's where the mandate to do this type of work comes from. So it does kind of get back into some of the points you were making.
Thank you for your work on it.
Peter?
Yeah, thanks. Can you show the Nicollet intersection and also the connection to the 40th Street Bridge over 35W, which was, the connection there was left a little unfinished. After being open 2 years early, they kind of left this corner anyway. So I just wanted to see how those are. The Nicollet intersection, crossing Nicollet at that intersection is difficult. Has been difficult.
I can show those. I will note that it's very concept level, and I'm killing time while I open up the drawing. So bear with me here. The point I would make there. There it is. The point I would make there is that in terms of design, we're in the maybe 0 to 10% design phase right now. There is some detail that's left to be made, left to work on in terms of what goes where. Oh man,
sure.
There it is.
So I'm sure what you're seeing on, there's a ton of traffic that comes up Blaisdell, makes that left onto 40th, and then right again on Nicollet, and that's I think in an otherwise quiet corridor, I agree. That is probably the hectic part. Yeah, go ahead.
Can you see the screen? Can you see the new drawing that comes up? Okay, so the rub here is that because it's not a capital project, we're not changing any curbs or anything like that. It's basically striping through the intersection. So we will do the colored stripes. And then the other change that will be made at Nicollet is the mast arms will be adjusted. Today, there's not mast arms crossing 40th Street. They're just across Nicollet. So they're adding mast arms. So you'll now have them in all of the approaches. And that's a sightline thing so that people can be aware of what's going on. So it's pretty minimal in terms of the changes. It's because it's not a capital project. And then I'll just add, this project really only goes to Stevens Avenue. We're not taking on with this project sort of the connection all the way to the bridge. So I've heard that comment before. It's something that we're going to take a look at, but we're not, it kind of dumps off onto where the existing curb cut is there. And that's about what we get. And it's the same answer. It's because we're trying to kind of shoehorn this one in with the existing seal coat project. And it's not a major capital project.
Well, that is carving out space at all at Nicollet is going to be a big help, rather coming off that bridge and then trying to cross and then continue westbound. And to have it all in one place, I think is real promising.
Yeah, thank you.
Improvement. Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions or comments for Dan? We will try to. I'll probably be writing up a draft of a resolution for you, and then we'll bring it to our first meeting, probably a full pack meeting for editing, which I'm sure
that sounds. Yep, that sounds great. Thank you. Yep, okay. I've got time. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right. Last, coming up today is the city view.
We lost you there, Barb.
That's right. I am For some reason I'm muted. I said coming up for the last presentation is City View Safe Routes to School with Bria Fast from Minneapolis Public Works. There she is. Hi, Bria.
Hi. Well, thanks for having me. This is my first presentation to you all, and I'm excited to be here. So, like Barb said, this is City View at 0%. So this should be a fairly short presentation. I just wanted to give you all an introduction to what the project is, and I'm sure that we'll have a longer conversation, maybe at 15%, but again, this is just an introduction to the project and some of the engagement that's been done already. I'm going to turn my camera off just while I'm presenting. I've had some patchy internet, so I want to make sure I don't lose you. All right, and are you able to see my screen? Okay.
Yes, we can see it.
All right. Okay. All right. Again, this is the City View. It's a City View Safe Routes to School project. The construction will take place in 2023. So right now we are in 0% and doing engagement. Concept development should be starting pretty soon. I'm just starting to wrap up most of the 0% engagement, moving into concept development in again in December and January and February. So I'm sure I'll see you again then. And that there'll be another round of 15% engagement again to go along with and coincide with 15%. The City View School is located, you can kind of see a close-up map on the right side of the screen here. It's just north of Lowry, just east of North Lindale Avenue, just west of I-94. In context, there's a larger map to the left. The grayed out square is what you're seeing closer up in a Google Street View on the right, but there's a few projects that are located nearby. Upper Harbor Terminal is just to the east, and there's also the Lindale Ave North pedestrian safety improvements that are, again, just to the west of the project. Goals: to make it safe, convenient, and fun. Walk and bike to and from City View School, to enhance some of the bicycle and pedestrian networks, as well as some of the neighborhood amenity connections, such as there's a park directly to the north, which has just in getting built out now. Also to integrate traffic calming elements that reduce vehicle speeds adjacent to City View School. We'll go into this a little bit, but excessive speeding is a huge issue, especially on 4th Street. And then to, of course, fulfill city goals, complete streets, Vision Zero, the all ages and abilities bikeways, transportation equity, and of course, climate action. There are a few networks that I wanted to start out by showing how everything kind of fits together here. So again, you can see City View School, that's the number 1. The red dots would be the proposed project route right now. I'll show another map in a couple of slides that shows possible route extensions. But for right now, this is the most basic proposed project route, that red dotted line. That layers on top of future near-term low-stress bikeways from the Transportation Action Plan on 4th Street North, as well as 34th Ave. And then, of course, it runs parallel just about to North Lindale Avenue, which is the a TAP PPN network, and as well as a future connector and a long-term low-stress bikeway. Again, this is the slide I was talking about previously. On the right, you can see possible route extensions. Based on some of the engagement that's been done already, it sounds like there are a lot of families that are actually coming to City View School who live west of North Lindale Avenue. So it's possible that the route on 34th could extend past and west across Lindale. We've also found that 4th Street North is a huge cut through. There are folks who are exiting I-94 at Dowling, just north of the project route, and they are driving super fast south on 4th Street to get to Lowry. So it's possible that some traffic calming treatments could extend, again, further north a couple of blocks past City View School to try to slow some of that traffic down. Some of the existing conditions, There's been increased parent drop-off. There's been significant bus driver shortages recently. And so that has increased parent drop-off and pickup. Sometimes, unfortunately, buses are not able to pick children up, and parents who are not planning on dropping the kids off now have to drop the kids off and are in a hurry. Also happens that sometimes the bus drivers are not able to show up and pick kids off. So it's a little bit chaotic during pickup and drop off. And I want to take that into consideration. It's adding to some congestion there on the street as well. And that number 2 spot, when buses do arrive, that is where they are dropping kids off. And then if you look across the street from that, Fellowship Baptist Church is there. It has a very large and very active congregation. That is not necessarily activated during school time hours, but there is a lot of evening and weekend traffic there as well. And then again, that number 4, because there is increased parent drop-off and because it is a little bit of a chaotic situation on 4th right across from the school, we've seen a lot of parents who are dropping their kids off just before that 34th and 4th Street intersection. Again, trying to avoid some of the congestion and the traffic. So they'll drop their kids off there, and most of the kids who are walking, biking, either from their homes or from a car, are crossing at that 34th and 4th Street intersection. Some existing conditions we just talked about: the excessive speeding, weekend and evening church traffic. Demand for signage. There are 2 school ahead signs, again, to the north and south of City View. However, a lot of teachers have said that they're difficult to see and signage is a problem. There's been a lot of requests for more signage or more visible signage, increased parent drop off like we talked about, and then a demand for quick solutions as well. Especially the teachers and then the neighbors who live on 4th Street would really like to see something go in before 2023. Of course, the project cannot get built before 2023, so that has led us to start looking at temporary or possible quick build treatments, which could go in or could happen sometime in the summer 2022. Some engagement has already been done, more is planned. There was a walk, bike, roll audit at this location. 16 adults and 6 children were able to come out for that. It was a great turnout. It was a wonderful event. And I was also tabling at the City View Parent Teacher Conference Night. What I heard from both events was mostly the same thing, which is that people are driving way too fast on 4th. People would like to see more school zone signage and more school zone designation, and that they are, if possible, really hoping for a quick build treatment or more near-term solutions. These statistics, again, they're based off of 16 people, so 86% makes it sound like a lot of folks. But what these are trying to convey is that really across the board, I mean, this group was comprised of people who lived very, very close to this route, if not directly on the proposed project route. And everybody was really saying a lot of the same stuff. Possible treatments include a typical suite of traffic calming treatments, so possibly speed bumps, pedestrian medians, bump outs, stop signs, traffic circles, and bike boulevard designation. As for the quick build treatments, again, this is all just possibilities. We're not sure what's going to happen yet, but some of those, quick build or temporary treatments could be temporary speed bumps, bump outs, traffic circles, or medians. Next steps, we're continuing with a little bit more 0% engagement. There's an online survey that's going live on Monday, and it will be active for 3 weeks. That's going to be targeting parents and families at City View School, as well as folks who live within 2 to 3 blocks of the proposed project route. That's asking a lot of the same questions as folks were asked at the walk, bike, roll audit. But again, we're really trying to start to narrow down what treatments, kind of taking the public temperature on what treatments they're hoping to see, and as well as where, they are hoping to see them, and also get a feel for how many of the people who are responding are parents and or who have kids who are walking, biking, and rolling to the school, where those kids may be coming from and what some of the barriers could be. And that is it for my presentation. And I would love to answer any questions or take any comments if folks have them.
Are
Do you
there,
have any sense of,
go ahead, Julie.
do you have any sense of how many kids might be within easy walking or biking distance if it weren't so scary to get there? If the drivers were not so dangerous?
Yeah, no, I mean, that's a wonderful question. I've been working with the vice principal and principal to try to figure that out. That's one of the questions that we're hoping that the online survey helps us get to. You know, right now, I mean, you know, they're able to count maybe 8 to 10, you know, families who are walk, bike, rollers consistently. As for who actually is within, City View just had a boundary shift as well. So yeah, there is a question on the survey that's trying to gauge, you know, are your kids able to walk, bike, roll to school, but they're up against barriers, be it traffic safety or other hazards? If so, what are those? That's a really good question that we're hoping to figure out.
Bree, do you have information of have there been traffic crashes or pedestrian injuries or bicycle injuries on this street? Do you have information about that?
We don't have information about that yet. I just got, we just did speed and volume tube counts. So I have some of that data that I'm, working to integrate into some of this. A lot of the crashes, again, are happening on Lyndale. So, I have, there is data that exists for Lyndale. I have not found data that exists yet for 4th and or 34th on our proposed project route. But we are taking a look at the data that we did just get back. So we'll see.
Great. Any other comments or questions for Priya or?
One last question, comment. I'm just thinking about people arriving slightly early or the things that might, I'm wondering if you're doing benches or gathering spaces or looking at any of the ways of making a space not like a pedestrian as an afterthought. I don't know the setup of the pickup drop off or how that goes, but as somebody who does arrive early at places, every once in a while, if I'm meeting someone, having benches and amenities to for that would be great.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great comment. One thing that we talked a little bit about at the walk, bike, roll audit as well, where, what could make this project a success, aside from traffic safety measures, and some of those amenities did come up. People also spoke a little bit about trash cans and street lighting and making sure that these spaces are well lit and people feel safe and comfortable walking and biking and rolling. So I think my approach, hopefully, is trying to take a holistic look at some of these things, and just like you're suggesting, think about the atmosphere and what it feels like and is like to walk, bike, and roll in this area. Not just, is it technically, safe? So I think that's a great comment, and definitely thinking about it.
Thank you.
Anyone else? You'll be back, you think, the early part of 2022?
Yep. I will probably see you all again sometime in February, maybe March, but yep.
Okay, great. Okay. Thank you so much, Priya. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much for your time.
Sure.
Thank you.
I will work on the two, there might be two resolutions that I think we're been asked to do. And I'll send some to Chris and have him look at them he's got the information, or anybody else that wants to look at them and help. I'd appreciate it. I'll just send them out, and then we can bring it to the full PAC meeting maybe for final editing for both those resolutions. if that's okay.
Sounds good.
Sounds great.
Okay. Well, in that, I think we're done for the day. Everybody have a good week.
Take care all.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.